Today, we're diving into one of the most famous and infamous books ever written, Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince. For 500 years, its name has basically been shorthand for ruthless ambition and, political evil. But is that the whole story? Let's get into it.
I mean, when we hear the word Machiavellian, this is exactly what pops into our heads, right? It means backstabbing, manipulation, the whole dark arts of power. It paints this picture of a cold, heartless philosophy where the ends always justify the means. And honestly, for centuries, that's pretty much how The Prince has been read, as a devil's handbook for tyrants.
But here's a twist. What if this book wasn't some grand philosophical statement written from a cozy office? What if it was actually a desperate, super practical memo? A memo written by a man who had lost everything and was just trying to get his old job back. You see, when you look at it that way, everything changes.
So to really get what Machiavellian means, we have to decode the myth that's been built around it for half a millennium. And that means we need to look way past that simple dictionary definition and find the real source of these ideas.
And this, right here, is the key. The Prince isn't some abstract thought experiment. No way. It's a product of its time, a violent, chaotic, and pretty treacherous period in Renaissance Italy. And it's a direct result of the incredible rise and the crushing fall of its author, Niccolò Machiavelli himself. So let's really dig into that context. The Prince wasn't written to be a theoretical text. It was meant to be a survival guide, and it was written by someone who had a front-row seat to what happens when power just disappears. Just look at this timeline for a second. For almost 20 years, Machiavelli was a top diplomat for the Republic of Florence. He was in the room with kings, popes, and generals. He saw how states were won and, maybe more importantly, how they were lost. Then, boom, 1512, his whole world falls apart. The Medici family storms back into power, his government is kaput, and he loses everything. He gets arrested, he's tortured because they think he's a conspirator, and finally, he's exiled to his tiny family farm. It was right there in 1513, completely down and out, that he wrote The Prince and dedicated it to the new Medici ruler. It was his resume, it was his cover letter, it was a desperate gamble to show the new guys in charge, hey, my experience is too valuable to just throw away.
So what exactly was in this radical job application? Machiavelli basically laid out all the uncomfortable truths about power he'd seen with his own eyes, truths that completely shattered centuries of political and religious tradition.
Now, this is where it gets really groundbreaking. Before Machiavelli, philosophers said a good ruler should be pious, honest, merciful, a good Christian. Machiavelli just threw that whole idea out the window. He said, look, politics has its own rule book. He introduced this idea of virtue, which doesn't mean virtue like we think of it. It means skill, strength, and the ability to do whatever is necessary to protect the state. So for him, a ruler shouldn't ask, is this the right thing to do? He should ask, will this action keep my state stable and secure? This was a huge shift. It was the birth of looking at politics as it is, not as we wish it would be.
And this perfectly captures his point. To survive, Machiavelli said a prince has to master two sides of himself, the human and the beast. And on the beast side, he's got to be both the lion and the fox. The lion, that's your brute force, right? The power to crush your enemies. But the lion can be kind of dumb and walks right into traps. That's where the fox comes in. The fox is cunning, it spots the traps, and it knows how to use deception. A prince who is only a lion or only a fox is doomed. You have to know when to use force and when to be crafty.
Okay, so this brings us to maybe the single most infamous question in the entire book. It's a question that has been echoing through the halls of power ever since he first wrote it down.
This is the line. This is the one everyone remembers. And yeah, on the surface, it sounds like pure tyrant talk. But Machiavelli wasn't just saying, be cruel for fun. He was making a cold, hard, pragmatic calculation about human nature.
Okay, here's the logic. A ruler can't control if people love him. Love, Machiavelli says, is a bond that people who are naturally self-interested will break anytime it's convenient for them. It's totally unreliable. But fear? Fear is based on the threat of punishment, and that is something a prince can control. It is a much more stable, much more reliable foundation for power. But, and this is the part almost everyone misses, he immediately follows up by saying a prince must avoid being hated. And how do you do that? By never, ever touching the property or the women of his subjects. As he put it, men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. Ouch.
So, did Machiavelli get the job he wanted? Nope. The Medici family pretty much ignored him. But the book he wrote as a last-ditch effort? Well, it took on a life of its own, and it's cast this long, controversial shadow over the entire modern world.
You could argue that The Prince basically invented modern political science. By stripping away morality and religion, he started treating politics like a science, something you could study with cold, hard observation. His work is the bedrock of what we call realpolitik, politics based on practical reality and power, not on ideals. His ideas are still debated in military academies, in corporate boardrooms, and in capitals all over the world. Why? Because he was one of the first to really analyze power, not as something from God, but as a human thing that could be won, held, and lost.
And that leaves us with this question, right? After 500 years, the central problem of The Prince feels more relevant than ever. What's the bigger danger? Is it a leader who's so idealistic that they can't see the world's real threats and end up leading their country to ruin? Or is it a leader who's so pragmatic, so Machiavellian, that they're willing to sacrifice morality just for stability and power? The answer is just as complicated today as it was in Machiavelli's time. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.